Hello, basement dwellers, freaks, geeks, degenerates, and scrufftards. Welcome to the war zone. I'm Skruffy, and this is Skruffytalez. And we have some really interesting updates from the Pokrovsk area. It does appear as if the road to Myrne is almost open. Ukraine has made a strong push, and we will take a look at that after, I don't know, is it 10 minutes into the video or something like that. First, we're going to take a look at some Russian claims because we know what the Russian official frontline map looks like. So we're going to take a look at that and what the Russians are saying about the Pokrovsk area. And we will explore if there's any truth to it. The Russian claims about their breakthrough by taking a look where all of their artillery is focused at along the front line. So let's start out with that, and that's going to be, I don't know, 10 minutes, and then we're going to head on over to take a look at the Ukrainian push towards Myrne. So before we move on, I just want to highlight this. I made a video about this, so you can check that out if you want to. But Russia held a public briefing, where Gerasimov went over the Russian front line, or the front line in Ukraine rather, and we saw the official Russian front line, what they consider to be the factual situation, or rather what they want to portray to the public, what they want to show all the Vatnik accounts that spread Russian propaganda on social media. And it's interesting to note that this should be a very recent map for the front line. We have the two prongs here moving down towards Lyman, or north of Lyman. That happened a couple of days ago, and we can see here that push upwards right here. That is the push towards Myrne that Ukraine made a week ago or so. So based on those two situations on the map, we know that this should be a relatively recent map according to the Russians. And interesting to see here up in the north that they, according to the Russians, they have almost surrounded and encircled Kupiansk. You don't see the Ukrainian counterattack. And also you can see here how the Russians view the breakthrough operation as a massive success, that they have well and truly broken through. It's a wide breach, and they have secured territory all along this breakthrough and have fanned out into the Syrsky line. You can even see that push to the west, that is still open according to the Russians, even though all the Ukrainians say that it's closed down and that they have mopped up any Russians behind the breach. But so you can see here that the Russians consider that breakthrough publicly, that this is a massive success. But we're going to take a look at this situation, because if this is true, we should be able to see it based on where Russia aims all their artillery. Because if they've broken through up here, that means Ukraine would want to attack them and push them back, and Russia will defend this breakthrough with a massive artillery screen. So let's take a look where Russia is aiming airstrikes and artillery. So we're gonna take some help from Andrew Perpetua, because he has mapped out, as you can see, Russian shelling. This is Russian airstrikes. You have Russian artillery barrages and everything, Ukrainian and what have you. And this is the 31st of July. And remember, the big push began on the 10th or the 11th. So we will see if the Russian artillery strikes along the front line moves north to support this big massive push that they, on their official map, have succeeded with. So let's take a look what happens on the 1st of August. As you can see, the artillery strikes follow the front line, together with you have some sporadic shelling in the back. Dobropilya is taking a lot of attention here as a logistic hub, but on the 2nd, you can see follows the pattern, and now we have some airstrikes deep, mainly here, Dobropilya, but some up here. Interesting. On the 3rd, But now we're on the 5th. Dobropilia gets an airstrike, but the artillery strikes follow the established front line. 6th, 7th, on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Now we have some Russian shelling at Kucherev Yar on the 10th. So what happens on the 11th rather? The big breakthrough. You can see the shelling along the established front line. Kucherev Yar is getting hit. You have some sporadic artillery strikes in the rear, as we see here and there. More than likely in support of the push. Absolutely. On the 12th, main shelling along the established front line. You have some shelling here to support the push and in the surrounding areas. On the 13th, this is evacuation due to this push. So the Ukrainians were worried what was going on here, absolutely, with all these evacuations going on. But as you can see, the main focus of all the artillery is here along the established front line, especially here at Rodynske. Russia made a big push towards Rodynske, where they tried to come in from the north, come in from the south, and it was a frontal assault supported by massed artillery and a lot of airstrikes. This push was massive, more so than the push north. Not sure why this hasn't gained more attention. You can even see that the Russians broke through and tried to reach a supply line coming down here. Had this been successful, it would have cut 2 supply lines coming in from the north to Pokrovsk, leaving Ukraine with only this still intact into Pokrovsk. Would have been devastating. But the focus had been up here. As you can see, the focus of the artillery is along the established front line, with some sporadic support of the units moving north. On the 13th, 14th, we see an uptick in artillery strikes, right? As we might expect, because this is in response to Ukraine launching the counterattack. On the 14th, this began on the 11th. A couple of days later, Ukraine is quick to respond, moves in troops. You have artillery in support of the Russian frontline units. A lot of artillery strikes at Dobropilia, but not the push itself. But again, as the main artillery strikes are along the established front line. On the 15th, Ukraine pushes in. You have some support, artillery strikes in support. But I mean, the main shelling is down here, not up here where you supposedly had the big, massive, successful breakthrough. Russia is focusing its artillery strikes along the established front line. On the 15th, on the 16th, the established front line, some artillery strikes in and around the area supporting the Russians still up here operating, but the main focus is still on the established front line. On the 17th, Ukraine clears up stragglers and what have you. Yes, you do have artillery strikes all over the place back here, but again, the main focus is over here. Take a look down at Pokrovsk, right? On the 18th, all the artillery strikes are down here again. Down here, especially here to the west of the breach. Russia has established a artillery screen where they're forcing Ukraine or denying Ukraine a chance to push through to close the breach. With this artillery screen, Ukraine can't push through the artillery barrage to close the gap here. So this is defensive artillery. Down here, instead of up here, where you still have Russians, obviously, but the Russians are focused in defending this position, these positions, not this position. On the 19th, again, take a look. Where is all the artillery? Down here, not much up here to defend this supposedly massive push north. On the 20th, all the artillery is down here. Some sporadic shelling, Russian espionage, but all the shelling is along basically the established front line from the beginning of the month. 21st, where is the artillery up here if the Russians are in control of this space? 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. Now you have some more strikes on Dobropilia, sporadic shelling up here, because you do have stragglers. Russia is more than likely hold up in Kuchery Yar, but the main focus of all the artillery is, along this established front line, 27th, 28th, 29th of August, 30th, and 31st, and now on the 1st of September. So if it's true that the Russians have pushed through in such a grand fashion, why is all the artillery aimed down here and not up here to protect this massive breakthrough? I don't know. You tell me. Leave a comment what you think about all of this. Are the Russians lying? Or is this here, what we're seeing here, just Ukrainian propaganda? Maybe the Russian artillery strikes, they're just, I don't know. It's part of a PSYOPs operation. The Russians are striking here and here to try and fool the Ukrainians that they are not up here. I don't know. But worth considering. And this is also interesting when we're talking about the Pokrovsk area, because Russia has moved in a lot of reinforcements to the Pokrovsk area. They have moved troops from Kherson up to the Chasiv Yar region. According to this map, those units will more than likely be used to reach Siversk. But take a look, pulled from Sumy Oblast. So Russia has moved. We knew this was happening. We've heard this, the rumors about this, the reports that Russia was pulling forces out of Sumy Oblast, and they are now being moved down to reinforce Shakove. Among them, 155th, famously that's a Marine brigade, isn't it? That has been wiped out like 8 or 9 times, and has since and then been reconstructed and been put into combat again. So these units, 5 units, have been pulled out of Sumy Oblast and moved down to assist at Pokrovsk. So where might they put these troops to good use? Well, there are 4 likely locations. Either to assist in the assault on Pokrovsk itself from the south, to assist with containing the Ukrainian push towards Myrne, which we will take a look at in a moment. We're getting there, hang on. They might assist in the assault on Shakove, or maybe they will be pushed into the breach and be used to try and push north to reach the Russians hold up in Kuchery Yar, or maybe make a push out towards Dobropilya. But we should remember that Russia is now reinforcing with these units out of Sumy, the Pokrovsk area, where Russia has 100,000 troops, or had 100,000 troops. If 100,000 troops needs reinforcements, that should tell us something about the Ukrainian defenses. If 100,000 troops can't break through, that should tell us something about the defenses, and that these Russians need reinforcements to keep fighting. Right? And it should also tell us something about the war at large if the Russians are abandoning the Sumy campaign. They're pulling back from Sumy to reinforce Pokrovsk. That means that they have manpower issues. They can't maintain these 2 campaigns simultaneously. And that is extremely interesting. And we will return to this fact maybe later, or maybe in a different video. I don't know. But anyway, this here is extremely important, and it tells us something about the situation at Pokrovsk and the situation for the Russian army at large. You know what? I decided to talk about Kursk and Sumy Oblast and what all that has done for the front line and what the Ukrainians were trying in a different video. We will now jump straight into the good stuff at Pokrovsk. This is ISW's map. So we are now going to zoom in right here where the Ukrainians are making moves towards Myrne. And here you can see confirmation. ISW has geolocated, confirmed sources and everything that Ukraine has pushed in and reclaimed basically half of Novoekonomichne. And also, as we saw on the Russian map of the front line, they showed that the push towards Myrne came from the south and moved north, coming in behind Novoekonomichne, just like ISW is showing here. There other mappers have been showing that the push came straight from the west going east, but ISW and the Russian map shows that the push came from the south going north. So now we know that that push came through here going north to Myrne, and Ukraine has since then been steadily pushing in to Novoekonomichne from the south and have reclaimed half of that town. And this is extremely interesting, because what this means is that the Ukrainians came up between these two lakes, pushed up this way through Myriobivka, came up through these windbreaks here and reached Myrne and took control of Myrne and some of the surrounding areas. And since then they have, after doing that, they basically cut the supplies into Novoekonomichne. There is a road here, but as you can see, the Ukrainians had positions on some streets really close to the supply line, making it difficult for the Russians to supply Novoekonomichne. And because of that, the Ukrainians, throughout the past week, has been pushing hard into Novoekonomichne, taking this big factory, taking small factories on the outside, moving in from the south, establishing a presence down here at first. They pushed in with pickup trucks, establishing a presence here, and since then been fighting their way. There were some counterattacks. Russia made moves down here, but now ISW has confirmed Ukraine has pushed up and taken half of the town south of this main highway here. And this means that Ukraine has more or less almost unlocked and opened the road leading to Myrne. If we take a look at this area under Russian control, you have Mykolaivka, a small town, a small village. There are some windbreaks here, a small patch of woods. I don't know what this is, a building with some walls around it, and then two big open fields of farmland. So there's not much standing between Novoekonomichne and Myrne. So Ukraine is extremely close to a vital, important breakthrough. If they can't push through here, which they seem to be able to do maybe in a couple of days, they can begin to move in equipment, heavy equipment, lots of troops to Myrne and their positions in and around Myrne. And we all know what this means if you've been watching my videos. Like the people in the comment section have named this potential push to the north Operation Hopium. What this means is that if Ukraine can push through here and reinforce and build up troops in Myrne, they have a chance of pushing into these windbreaks, going north, right here and here, and reaching Kopcheve. If they do that, if they manage to do that, they have not only cut the supply line coming through Myrne, they will have cut the supply line moving through Kopcheve to Novotretsky, where you have the bridges at Boykivka, right here. And then Ukraine has cut the supply lines to the Russians operating west of the river in this attempted breakthrough operation. If Ukraine reaches Kopcheve, all of these Russians, how many thousands, I don't know, they are cut off, more or less. They are essentially cut off because north of Kopcheve you have wide open farmland. So if the Russians are going to move supplies through here, they will be hunted down by drones like you wouldn't believe. And if the Russians would try to move on foot, well, they're going to have to cross this wide open space and this wide open space to reach friendly troops in Novoekonomichne. So the Russians would be hunted by drones here, hunted by drones here in these gaps, and vehicles trying to cross would be hunted all over these open farmland. So if Ukraine can come through Novoekonomichne, build up troops here, and push north, it would be a massive disaster for the Russians. Massive. Which might explain why they are moving troops from Kursk, from Sumy, down to Pokrovsk. It could be to lock down Myrne and prevent this push to Kopcheve from happening, because it's that important. They might also use these troops to push in on Shakove, because if they reach Shakove, these bridges, well, then they don't have to rely on the supply line through Kopcheve. They can come up through Popiv Yar and reach Shakove and then supply troops west of the river anyway. So it could be that they want to lock down Myrne and make a push for Shakove with these reinforcements. Makes sense. I think that is a logical move. Russia realized they have walked into a trap up in Sumy Oblast. We've talked about this before. They're pulling out. They might be relying on North Koreans to come in and hold the border. And then they can use those troops to reinforce down here to prevent a massive disaster from happening. Makes perfect sense if you ask me. So this is really interesting. Ukraine is really close to a real, actual pivotal breakthrough. If they can push through, liberate Novoekonomichne, and begin building up troops here, and then pushing north to Kopcheve. Operation Hopium, as the comment section has named this potential Ukrainian push towards Kopcheve. Of course, there are some news other than this big push. Pro-Russian YouTubers are talking about this. A big push into the middle of Pokrovsk, as well as up here through these housings here. We don't see it on any maps. ISW is showing it as Russian claims, but nothing confirmed. Nothing of this is confirmed that I have seen. So we'll see if there's any truth to this big push by the Russians. We should see it within 48 hours on the usual maps, if this has actually happened, or if this is just more infiltration units that have managed to sneak their way and cause trouble. But just so you know, this is what the Vatnik channels online are saying and what they're spreading on social media and on YouTube and elsewhere, that Russia made a big push up along these streets and have reached the center of town. Likewise, we have rumors, not confirmed as of yet, that Russia has taken this big hill and pushed into Shakove, the western parts of Shakove. Has not yet been confirmed on any other maps. We're seeing claims on the ISW map, nothing confirmed. What we do know is that Russia has made some small gains here in the last 48 hours, 72 hours, and they're trying to bypass this big field to coming in west here towards Shakov and the bridges in the area. So that is essentially the situation. We have rumors of a Russian push into Pokrovsk, rumors of a Russian push towards Shakove, and ISW has confirmed that Ukraine has pushed in and secured half of Novoekonomichne, and we are really close to a Ukrainian breakthrough where they can reinforce Myrne and begin an arduous push up along these narrow windbreaks to threaten Kopcheve. So yeah, Operation Hopium, it's alive and kicking. Sniff that hopium dust. God damn, who would have thought this whole thing would play out as it did here in August? What a month. A lot of back and forth in 1 month. Jesus. First, the Russians doing that big attempt, and then Ukraine swinging around and opening up the Russian front line, threatening the Russian rear in grand fashion. And now Russia is moving units from Sumy Oblast to reinforce down at Pokrovsk. I mean, if 100,000 troops needs reinforcements, that should tell you something about the defenses in the area and about the casualties the Russians have suffered trying to break in and surround Pokrovsk. Anyway, that's going to have to be it. I hope you found it interesting. I hope I'll see you in the next one. And as always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.